It's hard to imagine any more October surprises, and yet the month is still young, and voters have learned that just about anything can and may happen. This week, I spoke with distinguished University of Minnesota political science professor Dr. Larry Jacobs, and I began by asking him how many voters are, as yet, undecided, and if last-minute surprises impact voters' decisions.
According to polls, there are about 5-7% who say they're undecided. I think there's probably another 3 or 4% who are attached to each candidate who might melt away, consider another candidate. But it's a really small number, possibly 10-12%. This is a tight election in which the overwhelming majority of voters are saying they're locked in on their candidate and they knew who they're going to vote for.
When you observe the 2020 election process, does the dramatic increase in absentee or early voting cause you to pause when assessing the possible outcomes or considerations? For example, many voters have already cast their ballots before President Trump was diagnosed with COVID-19. Does his illness impact anyone who hasn't voted? What does this early voting process have to do with any of these late-breaking news things?
First off, I am quite confident that here in Minnesota and in most other states, our election officials are hardworking, they are nonpartisan, and they're going to do a great job. It is arbitrary when election day actually lands. There's always more events that come after it. I think early voting, whether we like it or not, it is here to stay. It has been growing over the last decade. Minnesota has actually now embraced no excuse absentee balloting. So I think it's here. I think it's going to obviously be much larger in 2020 because of COVID than we've seen before. We're going to have to get used to it, particularly in states that don't allow election officials to even open the mailed-in ballots and begin to organize themselves to do a count.
Well, we should note that Minnesota is not one of those states. The machines will be loaded and ready to run on Election Day. But speaking of that, President Trump in the first presidential debate said that he may not accept the results of the election, pointing to substantiated claims of ballot fraud. Also during that debate, he would not denounce white supremacist groups. Do either of those factors play into how people will vote at the state level?
I think it's been a big mistake by the president to be talking down mail-in ballots. There are a lot of my friends who are Republican strategists who worry that they may now lose the advantage that Republicans have often had with mail-in or absentee ballots. Second, we have laws in this country. They are enforced at the state level where elections are mandated by the Constitution to be run. We will have a normal, legal, constitutional process. We will have an outcome announced. What the president is saying and what will happen, I think, will be quite different. According to current polls, the president may well be far behind, even on election night. So I think there's a lot of nightmare scenarios out there. Some of them are being floated by commentators and media organizations looking for attention. But at this point, I'm not overly alarmed. I think it's going to be bumpy. There's going to be charges and countercharges. But I just have so much confidence in our hardworking, nonpartisan, and conscientious election officials in almost every state that I think we'll get to the proper outcome.
Even though Governor Tim Walz is not on the November ballot, the use of his executive powers during the COVID-19 pandemic has been a regular topic of discussion in each special session that we've had at the legislature. So he's not on the ballot, but do you think that people's feelings about those executive powers will play into whether they decide to vote for Republicans or DFLers in November?
One of the most striking patterns that's emerged over the last few decades is that our politics at the state and local level have been nationalized. And so you see very close connection between how the presidential election goes and which party does better in a particular state. Sometimes it's referred to as wave elections, just become more common. And when you look at a lot of the media coverage, of course, not this program, it tends to be focused on the national news. Look at the front page of the Star Tribune. It's looking at national elections, about Donald Trump. It's about Joe Biden. It's about, how the race is looking in the polls. I mean, all these stories, and so little on state and local elections. So yes, the conversation and the debate between the Senate Republicans and Governor Walz about his emergency powers has been significant. It's an important debate. And frankly, I don't think it's going to have much impact on voters who are primarily dialed in to the national elections. It will be influenced by that national context.
During President Trump's rallies in northern Minnesota, he has touted the endorsement of some DFL mayors. Is the DFL party changing, and how? And is the rural-urban split growing even wider?
There's no doubt that our politics have changed profoundly. We are seeing the Republican strength in the suburbs melt into greater Minnesota, where Republicans are now driving Democrats out of the Iron Range, which used to be their stronghold. And so, yes, we're seeing DFL mayors, these former DFL mayors, coming out support of President Trump, because if they're going to stay in office, they have to change parties, or at least get on board with the president if they want to stay in office. But if you look in the Twin Cities, you're also seeing the suburbs tilting towards the DFL. It's one of the reasons why you see the DFL doing well in statewide races, because they're able to get those large majorities in the urban core. They're able to kind of fluff it up with some of the suburban votes. And it's just not enough votes in greater Minnesota to overcome that.
There's a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. It raises concerns about the business model of social media companies and how the algorithms that they use are increasing the divisiveness in this country, potentially leading even to the demise of democracy. Is social media having a detrimental effect on political discourse, and could it ultimately impact democracy?
We've had predictions about the demise of American democracy since, frankly, its beginning, when the Constitution was drawn up in 1787. You look at the first real competitive election between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams in 1796. And there was, absolute certainty this was the end of the republic. Our democracy is stable. It has been around for a long time, and most Americans want it to continue. Social media, it's like radio when it came in the 1930s, TV when it burst in the 1960s and expanded. It's a new tool. It is being used by partisans to kind of silo into information that tends to reinforce their worldview, their biases, some of their prejudices. And that's a problem. But we also have organizations that are talking to the country. And I think, some of this is from news programs like this. It's coming from our community organizations that are bringing people together. So I'm not worried about the demise of democracy. It's changing, but it's not a news story.
Dr. Larry Jacobs, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.